Welcome to One Take. Today we're talking about Dune Part 2. The highly anticipated movie for a lot of people, I think including us, that's fair to say.
Well, probably the only movie this year I was excited about.
So we finally saw it. How about we start it with you? High level thoughts. What did you think of the movie?
So I enjoyed it a ton. Really, I would have gone and seen it multiple times since I saw it. Unfortunately, been busy, but I loved it. I definitely observed issues with it during the movie, and I rushed to shove those, deep down so that I can enjoy the movie. And I found I was still able to enjoy it. I think it'll be fun to complain about those things, and I don't get why they couldn't do a better job. But so much of the movie was awesome, so epic, visually stunning. I mean, all those positive things. I still would say I loved it.
Yeah, I had a similar reaction the first time I watched it, but in my line of work, I can go just take a day off to watch Dune Part 2 again. And my viewings were very different. I ended up liking it a lot more the second time, and I did like it the first time. But one of the problems, you know how in the movie, and I should say right now, we're going to just talk spoilers starting now. It's a spoiler review. It's right on the thumbnail. If you haven't seen it yet, get the hell out of here. But you know what? when Jessica, when she's pregnant, the baby starts talking to her and sort of poisoning her mind. Like, we have to convert the non-believers. I had that happening to me during the movie, except it was Adam sitting next to me. I'm like, what the hell are they doing that for? This is so stupid.
Was he actually making comments during the movie?
To be fair, I might have started it, to be honest. We were making comments back and forth the whole time. At one point, we were talking almost the whole movie. I mean, at least every few minutes, one of us made a quiet comment. So I'm like, he's awake the whole time. And then at one point, I see him looking down. I'm like, I guess he's looking at his phone, because he kind of had his jacket up like a little blanket fort. And then all of a sudden, he jolted. I'm like, what happened? And apparently, I mean, it must have been 30 seconds after I made a comment, he just passed out.
Wait, and then also, that was Alun or Adam?
That was Adam.
And Alun also slept through most of the movie.
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen too, because he's been boasting lately. Like, you know what time I started work today? 7:30. And then you think you can sit through a 3-hour movie at 8:45 p.m. tonight? And he's like, yeah, good point. And I think he slept through half the movie, but it wasn't like he slept through the first half or the second half. It was that he alternated every 30 seconds. He was awake, then asleep, awake, then asleep. To be fair, I know he is going to see it again in a few days, so he's going to give the movie a fair shot. You and I think we're both, officially we can say, we're both conscious the entire time we watched the movie.
Absolutely, the whole movie. I was caffeinated for it.
Today I was. That was the nice thing of seeing it earlier. I saw it at noon today. I brought a sugar-free Red Bull with me. The problem is I got the timing wrong. I thought if I start drinking it 90 minutes before the movie ends, I won't have to go pee. But I think I miscalculated how many trailers there would be, so the timing was all off, and the last half hour was rough.
Guess when I went for my pee during the movie.
Wait, you only saw it once, but you actually left during the movie?
Oh, I had to. It's like a 3-hour movie. I had to.
All right, I'll guess that it was when the nephew has his gladiator match.
Yes, that's what I went.
I knew it, because you were probably like, I know what's going to happen in the scene. So
I actually, though, I was so nervous the first half of the movie, knowing, all of a sudden it hits me. I'm like, I'm going to have to pee during this movie. Mm-hmm. And so I Google the when to pee.
At runpee.com, I think.
Okay, I think I've checked that site. I've checked a lot of these sites. They suck.
Oh, really?
They're not clear, and they're all filled with affiliate marketing things. You're flipping through, and it's this blog, and all this text of sometimes people, they need to go to the bathroom during a movie. Movies can be long, and bladders are getting smaller
when you feel
nowadays.
That pressure.
And it's you're flipping through, and sometimes you can't find it. But finally, I flipped through several Google search results to find something that worked. And I'm searching this while really trying to focus on the movie. And then I found some random blog.
During the movie?
During the movie,
searching.
I quickly pulled it up. I was so nervous about it. And I was so scared that I was going to miss something important.
This is Did you cut off all liquids 2 hours before?
No, I never do.
This is irresponsible.
I never do that. Okay, I panicked for a second. My computer went dark, but it's still recording.
Yeah, everything looks okay.
So no, I don't cut off liquids or anything like that. In fact, I was a little dehydrated the night before, so I was hydrating for the movie. And then I got a large Diet Coke. I drank the whole thing.
That's such a mistake. For a when I was like 12, I learned not to do that because of Return of the King. And I refuse to leave during a movie. I don't know that I've ever done it. Even today, I already saw the movie and I refused to leave. So I definitely learned my lesson.
I made it back before the gladiator scene ended.
All right, good. So you know how it concluded. So I like how we said before this, like, let's jump right into it. Let's not do a bunch of banter at the beginning.
We snuck it in.
Yeah. So I told you already that I had some problems with it the first time I watched. But even then, I was very conflicted because I think I went a lot harder on this movie than I would your average movie. And the way I think about it is if you have an acquaintance, someone you barely know, you're not going to tell them how you really feel. How's it going? Good. You? Yeah, not too good. I don't want to hear it. But if you love someone, I know this is a foreign concept for you, but if you love someone, you're honest with each other. And to me, pretty much every movie that's out there is an acquaintance. Ant-Man's out there. I'm not going to tell Ant-Man how I really feel. But Dune is intelligent sci-fi. It's not an action adventure by way of sci-fi. This is true sci-fi. It's the kind of movie that we wish every movie was in this genre. So this is a movie I can be honest with. But I think, so I'll just get right into the stuff that I had a problem with that I think held me back from loving this movie. Because I think the things that people love about the movie are sort of obvious. Like, we don't need to go back and forth about the visuals were, the music, those big worms. Like, the visuals are awesome.
Big worms?
How many times did you go to the bathroom? And then obviously there's some other stuff that makes this movie really special. And that's what I was going to say is that the difference between my two viewings, the stuff I picked up on the second time and comparing that to my first experience, I think helps to elucidate part of what makes it. Thank you, right?
That's a good word.
I wrote that down in my phone notes this morning. I was like, elucidate. Helps to bring out part of what makes this movie so special.
Wait, so elucidate just means bring out?
I think so. So you were complimenting me on the word before you even knew what it meant. So some of the things that I didn't like were totally unfair. One of them is I think I wanted this movie to be transcendent. I wanted it to be like the next 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Which, by the way, we can talk about that another time, but I finally watched it.
You did. Don't say anything more. Let's talk about it later. I wanted it to be transcendent. So anytime I saw anything at all familiar, I was like, screw this. Like, everybody's waiting to see, is he going to be able to tame the worm? Is Neo going to be able to jump over the building? Will Jake Sully be able to tame the big bird in Avatar? We've seen that story beat so many times. Or some of the humor when he's like, watch out for the demons in the desert. Ah! No, but seriously, watch out for them. And it's like, we've seen that joke so many times before. Any hint of familiarity, I was like, I don't like this. Which is unfair, number one. You can have familiar things and use them and execute them really well. But here's why that's such an unfair and stupid criticism. When he jumped on the worm, for example, it was a victorious moment, which immediately gets undercut when you see Chani, Zendaya. Mm-hmm. You see how disturbed she looks. Because every victory in this movie is also one step closer to Paul becoming a messiah in these people's eyes. So even though there are familiar moments, they are different than what you're used to. Because it's not just the worm moment. Anytime he does anything, anytime he accomplishes anything, it's this strange feeling you're not used to where it's nice, but also Messiah, holy war.
So in the book, at the end of the first movie, when he defeats that person in combat and kills him, apparently in the book, his mother says to him after, everyone's like cheering for him. I think people cheer for him. I don't remember if they cheer for him, actually. Anyway, she says to him, how does it feel to be a murderer?
That's
something like that. I heard that in the Alt-Shift X video about Dune, but I thought that was a cool tidbit, which goes along with your idea. Yeah, every victory is undercut.
Exactly. So even though it's using something familiar, it's using it for a greater purpose. And there are also some things I had about the movie that I didn't like, which I don't think are totally unfair.
Wait, just last point though.
Yeah.
You can use things that have been done before. Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with it as long as you do it well, right? Like, these are sort of archetypal things, right? Like, these are components of good stories. Like, I don't know, events in the real world that demonstrate whatever accomplishment. I don't. Do you think these things are necessarily cliche?
No. That's kind of what I was trying to say, is that I think that was an unfair standard I was holding the movie to, which is I wanted this movie to be unlike anything I've ever seen before, which is weird because I saw part one and I wouldn't describe part one that way. It had some unfamiliar elements and some familiar elements. So there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But even if there was, this movie isn't exactly doing that. It's got an interesting undercurrent underneath all those moments. But, and we'll come back to that. But there are some things I didn't love, which I don't think were totally unfair. And I don't want to harp on the negative, but I feel like I said, there's so much that's obviously good about this movie that you've already heard. So when I think, what do I want to say about this movie that hasn't already been said, this is the stuff that comes to mind. And then we have a lot of praise we're going to lay on this movie. And not just opinions and criticisms and praise, but I think we might even get into some analysis, themes, etc. But the not totally unfair stuff that bothered me the first time I watched it. And this is also something I didn't love about the first movie. The Harkonnen are almost cartoonishly evil. Their planet is literally black and white. And you see them and you're like, they're evil. There's one point in the movie I laughed because they're talking about the Baron, the head Harkonnen's nephew, and they're like, he's psychotic. I'm like, yeah, he's a Harkonnen. That's like if someone says, you see that guy in the all black costume with the helmet? It's a Darth Daniel. He's evil. I'm like, yeah, I know. His first name is Darth. You got Darth Maul, Darth Vader. If someone's first name is Darth, saying they're psychotic is redundant. But there is something cool to some of that. So I did a little bit of reading myself. And one of the themes in the book is how ecology, environment informs culture. To basically say that the Fremen are a certain way because they were raised and learned to sustain themselves on a desert planet. The Harkonnen, they don't describe their planet that much in the book. So Denis Villeneuve, he kind of worked backwards. What kind of environment would create the Harkonnen? And they came up with the idea of a black sun that instead of illuminating color, literally sucks color out. And that's why their planet is black and white, which is really cool. When they go indoors, you can see some of the color come back. And then when they go outside, you can see that everything gets washed out.
Wow, that's cool.
Which is cool, but it still stands that the Harkonnen feel like purely evil people, and I would have liked to scratch a little bit more under the surface to see what are they about. And maybe it's fine that they're purely evil, but I guess it goes back to what I said earlier, which is that I want this movie to feel transcendent. I want it to be complicated. And it definitely is, but in that one aspect of it, I don't think it's totally unfair to feel slightly put off by that.
Do you think there was anything original to just like the how drastic they were willing to go in terms of how pure evil the Harkonnens were? Like the amount of just random people they just wantonly killed. Like there's one scene where one of the Harkonnens literally just stabbing people. He's just like angry, so he just like kills a bunch of these servants.
Yeah, to be fair, that's the one they called psychotic.
Yeah.
They bring him a fresh blade, and to test it out, he slits a servant's throat and then walks over and stabs another one in the stomach repeatedly. And it's a stomach-turning scene.
Oh man, I was just gonna say they also show the head Harkonnen guy. He's just angry, so then they come into his room and you just see like several dead people there.
Yeah, and you hear them screaming before they walk into the room.
Like they executed that stuff well. Like
they did, yeah.
Really made you feel like, yeah, these Harkonnens are like bad.
I mean, I would say everything in the movie was perfectly rendered. Every choice they made was executed well. None of my criticisms would be on that front. So yeah, I think it would have been cool to probe a little bit more into their culture. I also thought, this is specifically in part 2. I don't think this was as much the case in part 1, but I found the Harkonnen came across as totally inept. And part of that, I think, is the movie is not about overcoming the Harkonnen. That would be a typical movie. It's beating the big bad Harkonnen. The crux of this movie is, what is Paul going to do with this Messiah role? Is he going to accept his supposed fate? Is he going to take advantage of it? What's he going to do with the power that's in front of him? Not just from the Messiah prophecy, but even just the fact that he's inheriting his father's empire. And then he finds out that he's got a nuclear arsenal that he thought was lost, he says. How do you lose a nuclear arsenal? I thought, I forgot where it is.
And when did they, I guess right when they came to the planet, they just hid the nuclear arsenal on that planet?
Yeah.
Like, I have a question. Don't they control another planet? Like their homeworld?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. And now the name escapes me, but yeah.
C, it starts with the C. What happened to that planet?
Okay, I guess it's there.
I'm sure there's just stuff I'm not following, but like it feels like that would have played a role.
Right, because they say like House Atreides is burned to ash. But of course, their planet and all the people they ruled over are still there.
And you would think they'd have like a fleet there and like tons of resources. I'm sure it's addressed in the book.
Yeah, which I do intend to read now. I
Yeah.
wanted to read it before, but because I already saw the first movie, I was like, well, now this is a movie series to me. I want to wait for part 2, and then I'll go back and read it. But on that point, that's another thing where I feel like it would have been nice to see more of what's going on off of this planet. Because outside of Arrakis, all we see is the Emperor, and it ends up feeling to me a little like Game of Thrones light. All these big decisions are being made by 2 or 3 people, the Bene Gesserit, the Emperor, the Empress, and I think that's part of the point, but I feel like I wanted to see more of how their decisions are rippling beyond Arrakis. Yeah. And then that would have added more weight at the end when it's like none of the houses are going to recognize your ascendants.
And you don't even see those other houses. Like it would have been nice to just see some sense of the scale of this universe.
Right. Because I was thinking in Game of Thrones, if somebody pulled off a badass move, beating the Emperor's champion in combat, and they think they're victorious, and then you would see representatives from the other houses, and none of them bend the knee, I imagine your heart just sinking like, oh crap. Here, I didn't really feel that. That bothered me the first time I watched the movie. The second time, though, when I really focused in on, like I said, the crux of the movie, I really tried to focus on Paul's journey and understand his decision making, because at times he seems ready to embrace the Messiah role, at other times he doesn't, and I was following that. When you get to the end of the movie and he beats the champion, and then none of the houses recognize his ascendancy, we're sort of seeing it from Paul's perspective. At this point, he's already had the water of life. He should see the future, so I think he knew they weren't going to accept it. So for him, it is no big deal, because he knew it was coming. And so if we're with him, it actually makes a lot of sense that they don't treat it as a big deal. So although I think it would have been nice to see some of the other houses, it's not because of the ending. I actually think the ending works. It's more because of those other scenes I talked about. Every time you cut to Christopher Walken, I just think the Bene Gesserit to me feel fairly weak at this point, because we're told that they're pulling all these strings. But the primary strings they're pulling are House Atreides and the Harkonnen. Taking out House Atreides was easy because there was the surprise attack of not just the Harkonnen, but they were backed up by the Emperor's forces. And manipulating the Harkonnen is easy because they're really dumb. Like that one scene where at least Adam and I just cracked up when Rabin, he just keeps failing to kill the Fremen, because he's like, all right, we've tried walking around Arrakis and they come out of the sand and they kill us. What if we try standing erect? All right, they come out of the sand and kill us. I'm out of ideas. And then is it his brother or cousin?
And cousin,
yeah, because it's the Baron's nephew. He comes in and they bomb the building. And then the Baron is like, good old-fashioned artillery. Genius. Like, is it genius, really? Humans have been bombing stuff for, at this point, it's the year 10,000, thousands of years. So I just...
I was, at that point in the movie, I was kind of shocked by that.
Yeah.
I was like, am I missing something? Like, he came up with the idea of blowing them up, and it's like, wow. Who could have thought of that?
Now, it bothered me less the second time I watched it, because I'm sitting there and I'm waiting for the Harkonnen to do something stupid, because that's what I remembered. It was just nonstop stupid stuff. And it is a while before it happens because the first time they attack by air. You actually do see them kill a bunch of Fremen. And it's some clever fighting back that lets them win the fight. Remember when they're running behind that moving armament? That was cool. But outside of that, it's sort of the same hide in the sand, jump out, kill them. I think what could have, and there's nothing in principle wrong with that, because the whole point is that the Fremen know this planet. Paul knows the Harkonnen, so they have a great advantage. And so I think that plot point, it makes a ton of sense that they just totally kick their asses.
Here's my way to defend it.
Yeah.
You know how like usually when I poke a hole in a movie, you give me some pseudoscience to explain it? Here's my pseudo-tactics.
Okay.
Maybe the real issue, if you think about it, they're able to hide in all these different places. That's the issue, is like they don't know where they are. So maybe they, like what the impressive thing he did was he got intel and figured out where their base was, and then he was able to go bomb it. Maybe they didn't know.
I had the exact same thought. And so I was like, maybe I missed that. So when I saw it again today, there's at least no obvious point where it's like we've located the temple, this important structure. But I think I think there's two things that would have made me less annoyed by this. One is if all the Fremen who got killed weren't just nameless, faceless people. If there's really no point in the movie where somebody we care about dies. If we got to know a couple Fremen and they were one of the ones slaughtered, it would at least make you feel like, okay, it's not entirely one-sided. They are successful, but they're not 1,000% easily successful. Like, I had to pay attention to say, do any Fremen get killed in this movie? And they do, but it's just kind of not easy to miss, but easy to not care.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, the easy fix you mentioned of if they just made it seem like it's not that the Harkonnen are completely stupid, it's that they're kind of stupid and they're not great with strategy. And maybe they have bombs, but like you said, they don't know where to launch them and they find the location. So that's one thing I didn't love. I think part of the reason they did it this way is, again, because that's not what the movie's about. It's not about overcoming the Harkonnen. Again, it's about Paul and Chani and Lady Jessica and their journey. The only reason the Harkonnen stuff bothers me, and then I think we can move on from the point, is when it starts to puncture how real does this feel? Are they cartoonishly evil and cartoonishly inept? And that undercuts the Bene Gesserit, because then it's not that they're so clever and powerful, it's that they're manipulating dullards.
Wait, the other thing, whenever we cut to the Emperor, I just didn't buy that. First of all, I didn't buy Christopher Walken, and I didn't buy the whole environment of like the capital.
Yeah.
Is like, first of all, this is like the capital of the Empire. Now I get he's like sharing power with these houses and stuff, but I definitely expected something to give me a sense of like, my God, like the power here. I got no sense of that. I think there was like a garden or something. Like that was it. I mean, even his daughter came across as like much more interesting and like powerful than him, which is maybe part of the point. But like, yeah, Christopher Walken as the Emperor, he seemed so out of place in this movie. Yeah. Didn't it seem like some old guy? And I love Christopher Walken, but like some old guy who stumbled onto the set.
I have to agree with you. I wrote that down right here. Distracting. And then I had sub-bullets. Christopher Walken, Florence Pugh, that's who plays his daughter. And I think it's because we don't spend enough time with them. And initially, the first few times we cut to them, it feels like this thing inserted into the movie, because it's Florence Pugh, the Empress, or the Emperor's daughter, narrating, sort of recapping stuff that we did see. So it feels a little bit like we need a narrative device, because it's a complicated movie. People might not remember the first movie, so we need a narrative device to get some voiceover to just explain what's happening in the movie. And also because we don't see them that much, and Christopher Walken is such a well-known actor. Not just a well-known actor, but one of the actors that people do impressions of. He has such a unique voice. So when he walks in, he's like, what are we going to do about the Harkonnen? Now, I think the way you get over that is we need to spend more time with the characters so they can disappear into their role. But when they're so infrequent and just put into the movie here and there like a fine spice, then every time you cut to them, it's like you cut to Christopher Walken and Yelena Belova. which is how I know her because of all my MCU recapping. So part of that's on me. I don't know the actress, but I know her as the girl from Black Widow. So every time we cut to them, that's all I could think. And then, so you can go ahead.
No, it's just like almost like you're cutting to like the guy who's watching the movie.
Yeah,
like that's almost
like.
what it felt like.
And then Anya Taylor-Joy wandered onto set for 30 seconds.
Okay, I don't remember this. I read that she was in the movie. Who did she play?
His sister in the future. When he drinks the worm juice, he goes to a beach and she's standing there and it's his sister. He starts saying, like, you can see the past. Now you can see the future. And then it's her. She has a couple of lines. One of them is like, I love you. And then it cuts back.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't even notice it was Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yeah, for me, I did only because somebody told me a conspiracy theory that maybe she's a CIA operative because she just sort of all of a sudden blew up in Hollywood. And so I already entered this movie with the narrative that Anya Taylor-Joy just keeps showing up everywhere. And then she just, I couldn't believe it. I had no idea she was in the movie. It felt like Interstellar, where like the twist of the movie is that Matt Damon's in it. It's like, oh my God, it was Matt Damon in there? So, yeah, I feel like, I don't know why this is the route we went where we're going through all of our complaints. Because I walked out of the movie today thinking I might love this movie. And I felt like the first time I watched it, I like it, but I don't quite love it. But today, maybe I love it.
Should we talk about the things we love? Aside from the visually spectacular, blah, 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 like some of the specific things I loved, I think maybe my favorite scene is when he is in that like huge cave indoor place thing with all the Fremen around him and he like really rises to the Messiah role and he's like yelling at everybody and like that was so cool and so well done.
That scene was incredible and it gets to the heart of what I think of why I love the movie. So in my second viewing, the thing I paid attention to specifically was Paul's journey. And he goes back and forth a few times on whether or not to embrace the Messiah role. Early on, he starts talking about, he tells his mother, we need to convert the non-believers, and that'll give me enough power to go after the emperor. And she says, your father doesn't believe in revenge. And he's like, well, I do. So at that point, he's planning on embracing the role. And then later on, or shortly after that, you see him put the ring away. And I paid attention to the ring as well. So both of these things reminded me of Better Call Saul, where objects are so important and how characters interact with them. And Better Call Saul had me fall in love with the idea of characters doing something. And then you're like, why did they do that? So I just loved watching Paul in this movie and trying to understand where his mindset is at each point of the movie. And when you do that, it becomes incredible. Like when Chani is telling him they're in the tent and they've just been physically intimate, I believe. And she starts telling him how she's worried about the power and, where's your head at? And he kind of doesn't respond to her, but he leaves looking so crestfallen. And you just see all this weight on him. He starts to fear the power, and then he pulls back. He refuses to go south because all the fundamentalists are there, and his mother's been spreading the word. So if you follow that journey, that elevates the movie. And it was there the first time I watched it. I don't think Denis Villeneuve heard what I was saying, and he's like inserted these scenes after.
But I do think there's so much going on. It gets a little lost. At least when you're like, I bet it's different if you've read the book. Because if you haven't, like, there's still just so much to follow of like what's going on with the Harkonnens and this and that. I think it's hard to keep track of Paul and the decisions he's making.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you can also fall under the spell of treating the movie like a typical movie. And if you do that, then you're like, why are these Harkonnens so easy to defeat? The villain in this movie sucks. Because that's not the villain. Again, the villain is almost, Paul's mother is almost more of a villain. Paul himself he's wrestling with himself. So it's easy to get distracted and miss that stuff. And I'm sure people in the comments will be like, it wasn't hard for me, you idiot. Well, you don't, I'll say it. Okay, you don't know what it's like to be Paul. I do. All right, I have all this pressure on me because I'm sitting there watching the movie and I know everybody loves it. And I'm not, my general policy, the way I watch a movie, some movies people say you got to turn your brain off. I, in a way, turn my brain off for every movie because I don't want to wrestle with the movie and speculate during it, try and guess what's going to happen next, try and analyze it. I want the movie to take me on an emotional journey, and then I'll go back and analyze. But I had this sinking feeling while I was watching because I knew everybody loved it, even more than the first one. I mean, if you just go based off of Rotten Tomatoes or something. And as the movie went on and I wasn't getting sucked into it and I wasn't loving it, I started to panic. And so just it poisoned my viewing of it. So second time I watched it, took the worm juice, opened up my consciousness, and now I can fully embrace it.
I would love to go see the second time because I think also I did have some like self-consciousness as I'm watching it. Like I feel the same way of like, I think a really good movie, you can't think during it. Like it really should take you, right? You shouldn't be trying to guess what's next or whatever. Like you might feel like sort of like what's coming next, but you don't want to be like analyzing it and that sort of thing. And yeah, even for this movie, I was so excited for it that it was at the beginning, I was self-conscious of like, all right, like is anything like that awesome happening yet? Like, am I enjoying this? Yeah, I'm enjoying it. Right? Yeah, I'm enjoying this as much as I should be, right?
And it's not just the external pressure of everyone loving it. It's the internal pressure of, I really want to love this because it's the only true sci-fi movie we get. So there's all this pressure on it. But I turned my brain on for the second viewing, and I was sort of analyzing it and trying to think about Paul and his journey, and it really improved the movie. And some of the complaints I had previously get put into a context where you're like, well, that actually kind of makes sense. And it's not just Paul's journey. There's also a few themes that I think were obvious the first time I watched it. Like none of these themes are going to shock people. Like the power of belief, really? But some details that are easy to miss. Like one moment, this little small moment that I absolutely loved. Gurney Halleck comes across as this no-nonsense guy. When he shows up playing the guitar, which also just what an awesome way to reintroduce him to the movie. Like my still suit's full of piss. It's just perfect introduction. First thing I want to say about him is that in the first movie, he would have been such a welcoming presence. You're lost in the desert. This is your mentor, the guy who taught you to fight. If he showed up, it would have been great. And here, it's like, dude, you're making me look like a jackass in front of the Fremen.
He's talking all loudly. And
So they did such a good job of bringing the same character back, but making you perceive him totally differently. But the moment I'm talking about is that, like I said, I was paying attention to that ring. And when Paul gives that big speech that you loved, at a certain point during it, he takes the ring out. And when he does, you see Gurney just gets this big smile. And I think part of the point there is that it's easy to think power of belief, religion. But it's not just religion. Gurney fell under his spell just as much as the rest of the Fremen because now Paul is appealing to his belief. He appealed to their religion, I'm the Messiah, and then he appealed to him. I am Paul Atreides. And what was the name that kept calling him the word for the desert mouse?
Usul?
No, Usul was his first name. Damn, I should have written this down. But anyway, he brings back the name Atreides. He takes out the ring, and now he's appealing to Gurney's allegiance. Muad'Dib. Yeah, I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides. So now he's not only appealing to the Messiah narrative, now he's appealing to Gurney Halleck's family, honor. We're going to get revenge. We're going to avenge my father. So it further explores the different ways into belief, which I thought was great. And like you said, the speech itself, not only was it a great speech, but Timothée Chalamet's performance has been so subdued the last two movies. He's been so quiet, and not just quiet, but also uncertain. And am I going to be the Messiah or not? I don't know what to do. That was a close one. Almost knocked my water bottle over. So I always talk about contrast. If a movie is at 11 the entire time, you're not going to feel a thing because you just get used to it. But if you go from quiet to loud, if you go from uncertain to a level of confidence you've never seen from this character, or at least from any of the performances I've seen, even outside Dune, I've never seen this level of confidence and aggression from him as an actor. You feel it more than you would feel it in any other movie. How many times have we seen this speech in a movie? You know, of like, we're gonna get revenge, we're gonna take down the bad guys, but never have you felt it to this level. On top of the twist that there's also the dark undercurrent, where Zendaya is there to remind you everyone's stupid except me, which is kind of the main theme of the movie. But yeah, you feel great, you feel exhilarated, but at the same time, you know this is a big step toward what Paul thinks will result in millions dying in a holy war.
I think you might even say billions.
Yeah, I think you might be right. Yeah.
And talk about contrast, right? That speech starts with like somebody warning him, being like, "Hey, you can't talk here. Like, you're not a leader. You haven't killed that guy." And he just starts screaming and he yells, "Who will stop me? Nobody will stop me. Nobody can stand up." He says something like, "Nobody can stand up to me." And everyone stands up and they like pull out their swords and they're like ready to kill him. And then he fully converts them.
Yeah.
Like, that is such a cool contrast.
His mom is like, "Slow down." There's only one other point I can recall him yelling in the movie, which is when he's on team not Messiah. He's arguing with his mom, and he's like, "You guys, the Bene Gesserit, you implanted this belief in them." And she's like, "We gave them hope." And he's like, "That's not hope."
That was cool also. Again, contrast.
Yeah. So that stuff, I mean, that's what makes this movie, I think, so incredible. There's also and this is a theme I found really interesting, and once again reminded me of Better Call Saul. It's sort of fate. So to some extent, it feels like Paul has no choice because he has these visions. He sees the future. So even if the future's not predetermined, if you see the different outcomes, of course you're going to pick the one that seems best. So it seems like he doesn't really have choice. But there's one really interesting moment when he finds out about the nukes and he contemplates using them. Then he gets a vision of Chani's face burned, all messed up and disfigured from the bombs. So it seems like it's not just a one-way thing where he's receiving visions. It seems like they respond to him based on what he's considering and the different options he's thinking about, the different paths. And so it started to feel to me, when you get to the end of the movie, he really has no choice anymore. But maybe he had a choice earlier. Like I said, he early on wanted to embrace the Messiah role in order to avenge his father. Maybe that started a domino effect. It eventually got him to a point, well, at this point now, you don't have a choice. He took the worm juice, he saw many futures, and only saw one way through. So, why did it remind me of Saul? One of the themes of that show is that you make choices which put you on a certain road, and maybe you do a few bad things and you can stop and say, you know what, I'm going to be a good person. But at a certain point, you might have made so many bad choices that it put you on bad choice road. And maybe there's no longer an escape, or maybe getting off that road is going to be really bumpy. And that is what I started to feel like with Paul, is that maybe had he not started off with the idea of revenge, maybe there would have been a better path through this. One where he doesn't have to break Chani's heart. One where he doesn't have to manipulate thousands, millions of people, I guess, on the planet Arrakis into buying into this Messiah idea.
So do you think that's what started his movement down this road? It was his pursuit of revenge?
I think so. And I know, again, people who've read the book might be shaking their head like, no. It's all laid out in there, man.
It's the snake juice or the worm juice.
The worm juice. I believe they call it the water of life. But that's my current thought. If I thought about doing a What Blank is Really About.
I was going to
Dune.
say you should.
Yeah, if I do that, I'll be reading the book. I'll be rewatching the movies several times. But today, watching it, that was what stuck out to me.
What else?
I was thinking of something I didn't want to forget. But the first time I watched the movie, and I don't want to see anything familiar mode, when he says, I see one way through. And I was like, Doctor Strange, Avengers Infinity War. It was exactly the same thing. He's like, I just looked at a million futures and we only win in one of them. It's almost line for line the same thing. He's like, we lose in most of them, but there is one narrow path through. And so again, I can't blame Dune. For all I know, Avengers stole it from the book.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah. I'm going to find out it wasn't in the book, and Denis Villeneuve took it from, he said he hates dialogue.
Denis Villeneuve hates dialogue?
He was like, movies are visual. I hate dialogue. And so I saw a lot of people on Twitter. He starts talking about Dune 3, and they're like, so I guess it'll be a silent movie then? Anything else that you remember, which, again, we need to win back the audience now because we spent like 20 minutes crapping on the movie. What else did you love about this movie? The visuals, music.
I love sci-fi.
I like that the music was used to give you a sci-fi, otherworldly feeling. There's one particular moment that sticks out to me right at the beginning of the movie when they're facing those Harkonnen that are on patrol. As soon as the Harkonnen start floating up to the mountain, it plays this really otherworldly, like, and it just feels like, yeah, it's weird. Like, people floating is weird.
Everything feels so otherworldly. That's the other thing too. It's weird. It's weird to call this sci-fi. I mean, it is sci-fi, but it's got this, obviously, all these like feudal, medieval undertones. And there's also like not that much technology we see. And a lot of the technology just operates weirdly. It just gives you such a strange feeling. It's really cool.
What did you think about the fact that they're part Harkonnen?
Oh, yeah.
That revelation.
Wow, I forgot about that. It's like the, spoiler alert. Can you spoil the show that I'm thinking about? Because just me saying this is a spoiler if I say what the show is.
Oh, no. Just don't spoil it. Just move on. Make your point without it.
Yeah, is that significant? I mean, why does it matter?
Yeah, and that's... the first time I watched it again, I was like, I kind of hate this. Because now I'm like... By this point in the movie, I was reckoning with myself. I was like, I wanted 2001: A Space Odyssey, but instead I got like a really good Star Wars movie.
2001: A Space Odyssey? I mean, this was so different.
It makes no sense. I know.
This is like when Adam was disappointed because Oppenheimer wasn't like October Sky with nuclear weapons.
Yeah, well, I admitted that this is not a fair reading of the movie at all. That was the reckoning I was going through the first time I watched. I was like, this is just like an elevated Star Wars movie.
All right, I'll say it. I hated 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Now, I knew you were going to say that. I can't agree with you because of my profession. I think I know why you hated it, but I can't say it on camera. It would come across as really aggressively pompous. Or what's the word I'm looking for? Something in that.
We'll go over this later, and the next time I'm on camera, I'm like, I love 2001: A Space Odyssey.
But so it felt like I was thinking to myself, oh, this is basically a really good Star Wars movie. And then it's like, oh my God, my grandfather is Harkonnen. It's basically Luke, I am your father. Second time, I wasn't sure how to feel about it. Part of the reason is that Jessica and Paul both find out about it after drinking the water of life once they essentially become zombies. They essentially become Bran from Game of Thrones, where they're not... Now, I don't believe it really changes their personality.
I only thought it changed Jessica, because Jessica became, what's it called, that mother? Grandmother? A Reverend Mother. She absorbed all the memories of, like, all the previous Reverend Mothers. So to me, her transformation, like, she's kind of a totally different person, but I don't think Paul is.
Well, Paul inherited the same thing. When he drinks it, you see it go over all the faces of the old Reverend Mothers. They say, now you know the past, now you know the future. I don't think you see... I mean, in my opinion, you definitely see a transformation. We don't spend that much time with him after taking it, so we'll have to see more in the third movie. But to me, the transformation can almost fully be explained by the fact that he has now seen all these different futures. He knows the way through. So what would surprise him? Why would it bother him that he's part Harkonnen, other than now he sees how that fits into the grander picture, how it fits into what they're doing next. So, but my bigger point is that we are sort of not with Paul or Lady Jessica anymore at this point. We can no longer relate to them. The rest of the movie, we're discovering, in the first movie, we're discovering Arrakis through Paul's eyes. He's never been there before. We're along for the ride. Once he has the juice, we're not on the same page anymore. So for us, wow, he's part Harkonnen. That's crazy. But for him, I don't know what's in his mind. So I'm not really sure what to do with that information. I'm sure they're going to reckon with it more in the third movie. But it kind of just bounced off me like, who cares? And I think that's because it kind of bounced off Paul and Jessica like,
Yeah.
who cares? So again, I mean, the first time I watched the movie, it was a complaint. The second time, I think it makes sense. Like, I think they're taking some of these familiar things that in another movie, it would be a big twist. But in this movie, it's not about that. So we don't care and Paul doesn't care. Now,
So then why...
The third movie now is going to be like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I'm Harkonnen.
Well, so now that we've lost Paul and Jessica as characters in a way, who would be the main character in the third movie?
Well, I don't know that we can say we have. Maybe they'll start to normalize at a certain point. And like I said, we haven't spent that much time with Paul yet. But I mean, I would very much like to dig, especially into Lady Jessica's character more. Because in the first movie, we find out that she intentionally had a male child. And they're like, we told you to have a female. How could you do this? She doesn't really answer. And I would like to better understand why she made that choice. Where is her head at? That's why I was kind of disappointed when she so early in the movie is forced to drink. And then it does feel like she kind of becomes a zombie. So hopefully they start to normalize at a certain point. Or even if they don't, Chani comes back and starts hammering him with questions, like interrogating him. Like, what's wrong with you? Talk normally. Stop being so weird.
Wait, and so she's Harkonnen? That's how Paul is half Harkonnen?
Yeah, her father is the big guy.
Wow.
Yeah, so right before Paul kills him, it was hard to hear the line, but he says, like, grandfather, and stabs him in the throat, and he's like, you died like an animal.
Oh, yeah. I do remember that.
Yeah. Let's see, what else do we have here?
Okay, sorry. I have to complain about it. I mean, the whole setup to the final sequence. What the Emperor has to, like, land on this planet and endanger himself, and... I mean, that's it.
Yeah, okay, so if we go back to my list of grievances...
And did he have any defenses? I don't understand.
He brought his whole army, they said.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
So why were they so easily able to penetrate his defenses?
Because they put all their army on the ground, on the desert planet, full of sandworms. Plus, they know that House Atreides, like every other house, has a nuclear arsenal. And so he literally, the Emperor goes down and he puts his entire army, maybe that's an exaggeration, but they say it. They say he brought his whole army. And they put them in this concentrated area where if somebody wanted to, they could drop a nuke and take them all out.
They don't have any reconnaissance to see that there's like a massive army,
right over that mountain.
That I struggled with during the last sequence. I was just like, I don't...
Well, and the frustrating thing is, I buy it in theory that Paul could outsmart the Emperor,
but just not that way.
Yeah, it's just not. It's just a lot of stuff in the movie felt too easy, and I don't want to be repetitive, but again, a lot of these things, the movie doesn't pay a lot of attention to it because it's not about defeating Harkonnen. It's not about defeating the Emperor. But when they make it that easy, it starts to feel unrealistic. And I think it would have been nice if we felt a little bit of what the Fremen feel. And we do in the moment when Paul's giving that badass speech, maybe a bit when he rides the worm. But when you make some of these things seem so easy, it was kind of a similar complaint I had about Napoleon, which is where he wins these battles. But I can't really tell how or why. Is it because he's a strategic genius? Paul tells us that I know the way the Harkonnen think and I know what they do. Well, I want to see an example of that. What are you actually doing to outsmart them? And to outsmart the Emperor, he sends a message, I challenge you. 10 seconds later, he took the bait. He's here. And he put his entire army in a little hole in the middle where we can just bomb him. So it was too easy. It was frustratingly easy.
Yeah. I mean, and he's the Emperor.
Yeah.
Of like the universe or the galaxy or whatever.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect a president of a country to put themselves in such harm's way. And now you're talking about not the head of a planet, the head of many planets. Now, having said that, though, presidents do give speeches. Right? And they go out in the open. So does that... But you think this is 10,000 years later. You'd hope that they'd have learned by then. Yeah, that was, I'll admit that bothered me. Riding the worm, even that felt a little easy. Like there's no, because I don't care. I don't need to see a training montage. But I was thinking, I was like, how exactly do you train for this without actually just riding on a worm? They're like, don't worry, Stilgar trained him well. How
do they get like a group of people onto the worm? That was one thing I was curious about. Like they treat these worms like caravans,
Yeah, there's a lot of logistical questions I have. And I know they seem irrelevant, but Better Call Saul, I did a whole video about it, the importance of details. I have to be consistent.
Turns out they're important.
It just, if you focus on those little details, it paints the tapestry. It makes the world feel more real and grounded. Like how Adam and I both looked at each other and laughed because both of us were worried the first time he got in the worm. I was like, they're going to cut. They're just going to cut in the middle of the scene, and they do. And I'm like, how did he get off that worm? That seems just as dangerous as getting on the worm.
How did they get off the worm? I was wondering that.
Yeah, and they never show you.
And how do they steer? I guess they just kind of...
Yeah, the steering makes sense to me. You pull on it. Tiny human on this colossal thing. Somehow it feels that little, like if an ant pulled on one hair, I'd be like, I guess I'm going left now. Yeah, these details are essentially irrelevant, but I do feel like they would have been nice to see. Like it would have just some of that world building,
I didn't read many reviews, but I saw one review, I think, that complained about some unnecessary stuff in the movie and how it dragged. And I was like, go expletive yourself. They could have made this movie another hour.
Agreed. Yeah, I would watch a 4-hour cut.
Yeah. So that really angered me. It's people like that who ruin this world.
You remember the guy in the first movie, the guy who was in Devs? Forget his name. He's kind of the human computer that like roll his eyes back into his head and answer questions. He was in the movie, and they cut all his scenes. And they're like, we will never release those scenes. I guess because of integrity. Like this is the movie. And I'm like, well, I'd like to see those scenes.
Yeah.
But so you said a lot of things you didn't like though, but let's reiterate.
Well, I really like that scene where he rallies everybody. No, still loved the movie. I did. And again, it's obviously I'm a huge sci-fi fan, but also this is a really ambitious, good movie. It is. There are certain
Are you talking
things,
to me or you?
I swear it is. No, it's definitely really good, and I'm holding it to a very high standard.
Love story. The love story, I bought it.
Yeah. Good love story.
Yeah.
Tragic. I thought it was well done and pretty tragic when he asks to take the princess's hand, the emperor's daughter, and you see Chani's like reaction. It was very sad.
Yeah. You have nothing to worry about though, because Paul says, I've seen the future. She'll come around.
Did he say that?
He did, yeah.
When did he say that? I'm trying to remember.
He said it to Lady Jessica.
Yeah.
I think she was like sorry about Chani, and he's like, I've seen it. She will return.
And Jessica's like, all right.
There were a couple parts too with the Harkonnen. I'm like, stop doing the voice. You ready for the battle? Like, so everybody on that planet is constantly like trying to talk like this. Reminded me of John Wick, where every line, it's like he has laryngitis. He's like, I am fighting for you. I need guns. Like, why is it such a struggle to get the words out?
You know what I find really frustrating is in a movie where you suddenly see the actor instead of the character. So that's like what happens with Christopher Walken. But it also happened for me with the head Harkonnen guy, with the Baron. Because who's that actor?
Skarsgård.
Yeah. And he's the same. Wait, Skarsgård? No, it's the guy. He's in Good Will Hunting, right? I think he plays the professor.
Is Skarsgård.
Oh, is his name Skarsgård?
Yeah,
is he the father of the other Skarsgårds?
There's a few Skarsgårds out there.
So I know there's Skarsgårds that are siblings.
This is Stellan Skarsgård.
Okay. So he is just very iconic. And the way he talks is so iconic, like Christopher Walken, that once I realized who he was, I couldn't unsee it because he's just so unique. I don't know.
You're trying to say, where does he end and the fat suit begins?
Yeah. No, I did start looking for that. And I swear, I'm not sure. I don't want to do that, Again, that's not the experience I want to have during the movie, which is why it's I don't know. It's hard. I feel like you can only cast such iconic people in leading roles where you see him a ton, like you were saying, where you can get over. Like watching Timothy Chalamet, like I saw Paul Atreides, I didn't see Timothy Chalamet. It would be really distracting if I saw, the guy from that movie, like any of those movies, Call Me by Your Name. Like that'd be like he doesn't belong in this movie. That'd be very distracting.
Wonka.
Yeah, or if I saw Willy Wonka, like that'd be very distracting.
The worst one, I know I already said it, but it made me laugh so hard. But just Anya Taylor-Joy out of nowhere. And even before the movie, they had a trailer for Mad Max.
Furiosa.
Yeah, so I'm like, she's in the desert. She's like a hooded. I'm like, it looks like cross promotion for that movie. And it felt like sequel setup. Because if you have such a big actress in the movie for 25 seconds, I was thinking I would have preferred you don't see her face. And it's like she's a hooded figure. It's his sister. It's a weird vision anyway. So it would make sense that she like, doesn't turn around. Because I think, like I said, the problem, because it's not fair. Oh, you can't put big actors in a movie. What are you supposed to do? So you always have to find unknowns. But I think the answer is they need time to disappear into the role. It's like your brain has to calibrate. Otherwise, it feels like a cameo, especially in this day and age when we've been trained for cameos.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, that character showed up. So...
the visuals. Okay, not just obviously visually spectacular, but really creative. Like to show us the embryo throughout its development.
Yes.
That was really clever and cool and original. Oh, actually, another film that shows an embryo. 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh, yeah.
But I thought that was super unique the way he did it, and like really contributes to the whole like vibe of the movie.
I think, especially the scene where she drinks the juice.
Yeah.
And you see how it kind of overtakes the embryo. That whole scene was done well because it's so challenging when a character's mind is being altered. You know the movie wants to do some weird camera tricks to express it. And that's something we've seen a million times before. But I thought they pulled it off really well here. And there's one moment where you just see this darkness. You see her eye and you see it turn blue. And it's almost like they're showing you her eye behind her eyelid because then she opens it. So you just see it floating in the darkness. You see the fluid moving through her body, the embryo. Yeah, that stuff was great.
So the daughter is pre-juiced.
Yeah, and it's the idea seems to be that she is, like, I don't think her mom's crazy. I think the daughter, the juice opened up her mind. So even as an infant, she's already thinking.
Yeah.
She's already seeing the future. That's how she was able to communicate with Paul. And she's actually talking to her mother. That's my impression. It would have been cool if they explored those details. No. I mean, some stuff is mysterious. The greatest science is magic. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Did Neil deGrasse Tyson say that? We're not going to rant about him again on this episode. But I just want to, we're holding this movie to a really high standard. It was extremely fun to watch. I'm going to think about it so much, and I would gladly go rewatch this movie several times.
Yeah, I think you'll like it more the second time because, like I said, some of the I'm just repeating myself a million times, so just,
I think I want to rewatch the first movie again, too. I just want to rewatch, I've already rewatched it a few times on YouTube, the scene where he sees that vision of the future, like millions chanting my name, like the Holy War, all that stuff.
I remember Lund was annoyed because in the trailer for the first movie, you see Jason Momoa say, "Let's fight like demons." And it's this great moment. But he never says it in the movie. He says they fight like demons about the Fremen. Hate when they do that.
That's lying.
Yeah, I rewatched the first movie in my Vision Pro. It's the first time I watched a full movie in 3D, and I did balcony seat middle. So it's kind of like you're just floating in the theater in this abyss in this big 3D movie in front of you. It was pretty cool. Was it worth buying that device just to be able to watch movies? TBD.
Yeah, especially you have AMC Movie Pass. You could have just gone to the theater.
Well, no, for the first movie.
Not for the first one.
All right, any other thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a really good movie. I mean, visually spectacular.
The really visuals, the audio. Zendaya's smarter than everybody. Covered that. She only has one name, apparently. No last name.
Oh, wow. There's like lore and stuff in the books. In the books, I think we know who her parents are.
Oh, okay. Let's not get into it.
Yeah.
It could be. Wait, that was another thing, and then we can wrap it up. This is not like a good or bad thing, but I was just surprised. I know there's a whole series of books, and I know the original author wrote the first, I think, 3, but at least more than just the first one. But I didn't realize it was such a serialized story. I always assumed in my mind there's the first book that's kind of a complete story, and then if you want to, you can keep reading and see the next one. But this was very much not a complete. I mean, there is a conclusion to the movie. It's like Paul makes his choice, but it's very much like they are making a third one that they have to. I didn't go in expecting that, so I was surprised.
Oh, you thought it... Well, okay. In a certain sense, if you think of the story as Paul's journey of accepting this Messiah role, like that's happened because it seems like by the end of the movie, he's chosen the future where the Holy War happens, right? Because those other houses don't bend the knee to him, right? So you sort of know, okay, it's happening now.
Right. But I mean, there's literally like one of the last lines is, the Holy War is just beginning.
Yeah.
And 20 minutes ago, we saw Anya Taylor-Joy. So I'm like, this is... I mean, I already knew going in they're working on the sequel.
Yeah.
I just didn't realize it was such a middle chapter.
I mean, how many would Denis Villeneuve be willing to make?
I don't know. I mean, he seems to be pretty into the series.
Yeah.
I know there's interviews where he's talked about this. But at minimum, he seems fully bought in on doing a third one, which is great. That's the one that'll really transcend the genre. All right, I think we're ready to wrap this up. What do you think?
Yeah.
Holy War has only just begun.
Only just begun.
All right, with that, thank you everybody for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for more. If you've somehow stumbled upon this video and you don't even know us, and you're like, who are these small-time YouTubers? What is it, 1,000 subscribers? We have a real channel, too. I mean,
this is a real channel.
You can check out the main channel, One Take. Thank you for watching, and see you
on the next One Take.
Just to get you in the mood.